Most people are not broke because they lack opportunity. They're broke because they bought into a system designed to keep them in financial slavery. You've been lied to. You were trained to stay average, and unless you unlearn these 7 money myths, you will keep working harder just to stay stuck. People love to throw around the phrase, "it takes money to make money," like it's gospel truth, but let me break something to you that may flip your entire perspective. That statement is not just a lie, it's a trap. A mental prison designed to keep you waiting, watching, and wishing for money before you ever step into your assignment. You've been led to believe that until you have cash, you can't start a business, invest, or succeed financially. And that belief is the very reason you stay broke. You don't need money to make money. You need value. You need vision. You need faith, discipline, and resourcefulness. Money is not the root of wealth. Your God-given ideas are. The richest people in the world didn't start with money. They started with a solution to a problem. And until you recognize that money is not the seed but the fruit, you'll keep waiting for a harvest without ever planting anything. Let's be real, if money were the only key to wealth, then every trust fund baby would be a billionaire and every broke college dropout would be stuck forever. But we both know that's not true, because we've seen people with nothing, no connections, no capital, no support, turn their pain into purpose and their ideas into income. Why? Because they stopped waiting for money and started moving with value. The marketplace doesn't reward effort. It doesn't even reward intelligence. It rewards value. Solve a problem, meet a need, fill a gap. That's where money comes from. You don't get paid because you show up. You get paid because you show up with a solution. The janitor, the lawyer, the CEO, they all trade value for compensation, and guess what? None of them were born with money in hand. They built it based on how they positioned their value. Most people think they need capital to start a business, but let me challenge that. What if you had a $0 marketing budget but a $100,000 strategy? What if you didn't own inventory, but you owned attention and influence? What if you couldn't afford to hire, but you knew how to collaborate and offer performance-based partnerships? You don't need money. You need leverage. You need to learn how to multiply what you already have. Let me give you an example. Think about someone with a phone in their pocket, access to the internet, and a voice that can teach, motivate, or explain. That person can start a business today. You can sell knowledge, you can coach, you can create content, you can broker deals, you can be a connector. None of those require startup capital. They require hustle, discipline, and faith in your own value. We live in the most resource-rich generation in human history, and people are still broke. Not because of what they don't have, but because of what they believe they need before they can start. And the belief that you need money to make money is the devil's favorite delay tactic. Because if you believe you need something you don't have, you'll sit down and settle instead of stepping out. Building wealth doesn't start with dollars. It starts with decisions, with declarations, with an internal shift that says, I don't care what I don't have. I'm going to use what I do have. Remember this. God never asked Moses what he didn't have. He said, what's in your hand? You don't need what's in someone else's bank. You need to activate what's already in your own hand. Too many people are sitting on $1,000,000 ideas because they're waiting for $1,000 funding. But what if the right conversation, the right collaboration, the right pitch, or the right post could open the door? What if you stopped believing you were underqualified just because your wall, it was empty? People confuse capital with capability. Capital can amplify what you do, but it does not define your potential. If you gave money to someone with no vision, they'd waste it. But if you gave vision to someone with no money, they'd find a way to make it happen. That's the difference between poverty and prosperity. It's not dollars, it's discipline. Even when you do get access to capital later, if you still operate with a poverty mindset, you'll lose it. The broke lottery winner, the 6-figure earner with 5-figure habits, the millionaire athlete who ends up bankrupt. They all prove the same truth. Money doesn't fix money problems. Mindset does. So let me say it plain. Stop making money your excuse. Stop saying, I'll start when I get the money. No, you start before the money shows up, because once you start solving problems, adding value, and showing up with boldness and excellence, the money will chase you. You don't need money to make money. You need to stop believing that lie and start moving like your gift is enough, because it is. One of the most dangerous lies that's ever been passed down is this: if you just work hard, you'll be successful. People say it like it's a moral truth. Parents teach it. Teachers preach it. Culture celebrates it. But let's be honest, if hard work alone created wealth, then every construction worker, every janitor, every field laborer would be a millionaire right now, but they're not. Why? Because the truth is, hard work does not equal wealth. It never has. Wealth is not a reward for how exhausted you are. It's not a badge you earn for sacrificing your health, your family, or your sanity. Wealth is the result of strategy, systems, leverage, and value. But people who are trained to worship effort over elevation stay stuck. They hustle 60 hours a week and still can't break free. Why? Because they've been taught to grind, not grow. You've got people bragging about how tired they are, how little they sleep, how many jobs they have, like it's noble. That's not noble. That's bondage. Let's get this straight. Activity is not accomplishment. Busyness is not business. And if your grind has no guidance, all you're doing is wearing yourself out for a paycheck that keeps you broke. Working harder only makes sense if you're working on the right thing. You can dig a ditch with a spoon for 12 hours and call that hard work. But someone with a backhoe and a plan will do in 10 minutes what took you all day. So why do so many people still believe the lie? Because the system was designed to make you proud of your labor while it robs you of your time. You were trained to think that struggle equals success, that if you suffer long enough, eventually someone will reward you. But wealth doesn't come from suffering, it comes from solving. The people who make the most money aren't the ones who hustle the hardest. They're the ones who solve the biggest problems at scale, with systems that don't need them to be there 24/7. Look around. The wealthiest people you know have systems working for them. They don't trade time for dollars. They trade ideas for value. They've set things up so that money moves even when they don't. Meanwhile, most people are still stuck in the cycle of work harder, get paid, spend, repeat, wondering why they never get ahead. Hard work is important. It builds character. It teaches discipline. But it is not enough. Not in this economy. Not in this era. The world doesn't pay you for how hard you work. It pays you for how smart you apply it, for how well you position yourself, for how well you leverage your time, talent, and tools. If you work hard but refuse to work smart, you're just making someone else rich while you stay stuck. Let's be real. Most people aren't afraid of hard work. They're just addicted to comfort zones, so they work hard at things that don't scale. They stay on jobs that drain them. They fear risk. They avoid learning new skills, and they call it being responsible. But true responsibility is not staying in survival mode just because it's familiar. It's stepping into purpose, even when it's uncomfortable, because you refuse to settle for less. You want to know what really builds wealth: ownership, leverage, intellectual property, passive income. You work hard to build the foundation, yes. But if you stay in the do it all yourself phase forever, you will burn out before you ever build anything that lasts. You don't build wealth with effort alone. You build it with elevation, automation, and duplication. This is why some people clock in at 9 a.m. and out at 5 p.m. for 40 years and retire with nothing, while others grind for 2-3 years building a brand, a system, or a stream of income. and live free for the rest of their life. The difference isn't work ethic, it's work placement. Are you investing your energy into something that multiplies or something that just pays? And let's talk faith for a minute. Even God doesn't bless chaos. He blesses order. So if your life is nothing but grind with no plan, hustle with no vision, He can't multiply that. God gives seed to the sower, yes, but if you eat every seed because you're too tired to think, build, or invest, you'll always be in lack. You were not created to just labor. You were created to lead. So, stop chasing exhaustion as proof of success. Stop thinking burnout is a badge of honor. Start asking better questions. What am I building? What am I owning? What am I automating? What am I teaching others to do so? I'm not the only one doing it. Because until you shift from worker to builder, from employee mindset to entrepreneur mindset, from grind to growth, you will keep mistaking motion for progress. The world doesn't need more tired people. It needs more transformed people. People who understand that wealth doesn't come from working harder. It comes from working wiser. Save your money. That's what we've been told since we were kids. Every parent, every teacher, every financial expert on TV repeats it like a sacred law. They make it sound like the ultimate path to wealth. Just save a little bit every month. Live below your means. One day you'll be rich, but let's call it what it is, a myth, a lie, a mindset that sounds wise but keeps people poor. Let me say it plainly, saving money does not make you rich. It makes you responsible, but it does not make you wealthy. Now don't twist this. Saving has its place. You need saving. For emergencies, you need a cushion, but savings alone is not a wealth building tool. It's a security blanket. And if all you ever do is save, you're playing defense in a game that rewards offense. You're not building. You're preserving. You're not multiplying. You're protecting. That's not how wealth is created. The banks told you to save money. You know why. Because when you save money, they get rich, not you. You put your money in the bank, they give you 1% interest. Basically nothing. But then they take your money and lend it out at 7%, 10%, 18% on credit cards, car loans, mortgages. They make a fortune on your savings and you get peanuts in return. That's the game. You think you're being smart by saving, but you're just giving your money to people who know how to use it better than you do. They don't save. They invest. They leverage. They multiply. While you're stashing cash in a savings account earning next to nothing, inflation is eating your money alive. Let's talk about that. Inflation is a silent thief. Every year, your money loses value. That $10, zero you saved 5 years ago, it buys less today. That's not wealth. That's erosion. Saving might keep your money safe from reckless spending, but it can't keep it safe from time. Only investment can outpace inflation. Only ownership, cash flow, and assets protect and multiply wealth. But most people don't want to invest. Why? Because saving feels safe, and let's be honest, most people are addicted to safety. They'd rather sit on their money than learn how to grow it. They'd rather stay in control of their little pile than risk building something bigger. And fear, not wisdom, is what keeps them saving instead of scaling. Let me show you how this plays out. Imagine someone saving $500 a month. That's $60008 year. Over 10 years, they've saved $60000. Sounds impressive, right? Now imagine someone else who takes that same $500 and invests it into learning a skill, building a business, or buying income-producing assets. Maybe they flip it into $500, then $20,000, then $100,000. That's how wealth moves, not in a straight line, but in multiplication. That's the difference between a scarcity mindset and an abundance mindset. The saver is focused on preserving. The wealth builder is focused on producing. The saver wants to hold on. The investor wants to create more. One fears loss. the other expects gain. One hides their money, the other puts it to work. And that's what money was created to do, work. It's a tool, a servant. If your money is sitting still, it's not serving you. You work hard for your money, but the wealthy learn how to make their money work hard for them. That's the shift. Now let's deal with the excuse. People say, well, I don't have enough to invest. That's the lie that keeps them broke. You don't need $1 million to start investing. You need a mindset shift. You can invest time. You can invest in skills. You can invest in knowledge, relationships, ideas, and platforms. The seed is already in your hand. You just haven't planted it. It's not about how much you have. It's about what you do with what you have. Some people double their income not by saving, but by investing in themselves, taking a course, starting a side hustle, partnering with someone who has what they lack. That's the game. That's how you multiply. And here's the truth. Savers rarely become wealthy because they fear movement. Wealth doesn't stay still. It flows, it grows, it circulates. Money follows value, and value flows through activity. Wealthy people aren't sitting on piles of cash. They're sitting on assets, businesses, real estate, brands, systems, royalties. They don't stack money. They circulate it. If saving was the path to wealth, then every frugal person would be rich. But they're not, because you can't out-save inflation. You can't out-save stagnation. You can't save your way to freedom. Saving might keep you from going under, but it won't take you over. And if your goal is to live in overflow, not just survive but thrive, then you've got to stop thinking like a saver and start thinking like a steward, an investor, a builder. Money in the mattress doesn't grow. Money in the marketplace does. We've all heard it. Debt is bad. Stay out of debt. If you have debt, you're doing something wrong. And while that sounds responsible on the surface, let me challenge you with something most people never say. Debt is not the problem. Ignorance is. The idea that all debt is evil is a myth, and believing that myth is one of the reasons most people never escape financial mediocrity. Debt is not your enemy. Misused debt is. Just like fire can burn your house down or heat your home, it all depends on how you use it. Debt, when used correctly, is a powerful tool. In fact, most wealthy people didn't avoid debt. They leveraged it. The middle class fears debt. The wealthy master it. Let's break it down. There are two types of debt, consumptive and productive. Consumptive debt is what keeps people broke, buying things they can't afford, things that lose value the second they swipe their card. New cars, luxury clothes, vacations they haven't earned yet. That's debt that takes money out of your pocket every month and leaves you with nothing but bills and regrets. But productive debt, that's different. That's the kind of debt that builds businesses, buys real estate, creates cash flow, and multiplies your net worth. That's the debt that puts money into your pocket. It's the kind of debt that banks use every day. It's what the wealthy use to accelerate growth. It's what allows you to own assets without paying full price up front. That's called leverage. The problem isn't that people use debt. The problem is how they use it. Poor people use debt to survive. The wealthy use debt to scale. When poor people borrow, it's usually to fund liabilities. When wealthy people borrow, it's usually to fund assets. That's the game. The difference isn't in the loan, it's in the mindset. You've been trained to fear debt because you've only seen it used the wrong way. You've only seen people get trapped in credit cards, car loans, and payday advances. But what you didn't see is how businesses are built with lines of credit, how real estate portfolios grow with opium, other people's money, how even governments and corporations strategically use debt to grow, expand, and profit. And yet, here's the crazy part. The average person is told to stay away from debt entirely while the wealthiest institutions in the world are swimming in it. You think that's a coincidence? No, that's conditioning. They want you afraid of debt so you never learn how to use it, So you stay small, stay scared, and stay under. Let's get real. Most people don't even understand interest rates, amortization schedules, or how to evaluate return on investment. That's why they fear debt, because they never learn to manage it. It's not the tool. That's the problem. It's the lack of training. Give someone a chainsaw with no instructions, and they'll hurt themselves. Teach them how to use it, and they can build an empire. There's a difference between using debt to fund your lifestyle and using debt to fund your legacy. One leads to stress, other to success. One drains you, the other elevates you. But if you don't know how to discern the difference, you'll lump them together and say all debt is bad, which is like saying all fire is dangerous or all medicine is poison. The power is in the purpose. Now, don't get it twisted. I'm not saying go rack up loans without a plan. I'm not saying be reckless or impulsive. What I am saying is that the fear of debt is often worse than the debt itself, because fear paralyzes you. It keeps you from seizing opportunities that could change your life. It keeps you stuck in cash, only thinking. In a world that runs on leverage, do you realize you can take a business loan, flip it into revenue, and pay it off with the profit, while still scaling? Do you realize you can buy a cash flowing property with 20% down, let the tenants pay off the mortgage, and walk away with equity and income? You realize you can borrow at 5% and earn at 15%, and the spread is your wealth. But if you believe debt is always bad, you'll never touch those opportunities. You'll be so busy trying to stay debt-free that you miss being financially free. And let me tell you something, being debt-free is not the goal. Being wealthy is. Being in control is. And sometimes the path to that includes using strategic, intelligent, calculated debt to build something bigger than your bank account could afford on its own. You see, financial freedom isn't about never owing. It's about never being owned. It's about owning your decisions, owning your strategy, and owning your results. That's the shift. Stop being scared of debt. Start being scared of staying small because you never learned how to use it wisely. Everybody's out here preaching. You need multiple streams of income. They say it like it's the end goal, like once you've got 5, 6, or 7 streams, you've made it. You've arrived. But let me tell you the truth that no one else is saying. Multiple streams of income is not the goal. It's a result, a byproduct. And chasing the streams without building the source is exactly why so many people stay broke while trying to look rich. People hear multiple streams and think they need to go out and start 5 different side hustles at once. One day they're flipping sneakers, the next they're trading crypto, then they're doing drop shipping, Uber Eats, and trying to be a YouTuber, all at the same time. But what they don't realize is this: scattered energy produces scattered results. You don't multiply chaos, you multiply clarity. The goal isn't to chase a bunch of different streams. The goal is to build one solid source, a high income skill, a scalable business and asset producing system. That becomes the foundation. Once that source is strong, then you use the overflow to create more streams. But if you're out here trying to start multiple streams with no solid foundation, you're just planting seeds in dry dirt. Nothing grows like that. Let me make it plain. Multiple streams of income without mastery is financial distraction. If you haven't mastered one, you're not ready for many. Period. You build wealth by going deep before you go wide. You become dangerous in one lane before you try to dominate 5. The reason most people can't maintain multiple streams is because they've never built one that runs without them. Wealth is not about how many streams you have. It's about how many of those streams are automated, systemized, and sustainable. If your income stops the moment you stop working, you don't have multiple streams. You just have multiple jobs. That's not freedom. That's busyness disguised as success. People love to quote the stat, millionaires have 7 streams of income. True, But what they leave out is that they didn't start with 7. They started with one business, one skill, one engine that generated the cash flow to create the rest. You're trying to skip the process and wonder why you're stuck in struggle, because you're chasing fruit without planting roots. Don't miss this. Multiple active streams will drain you, but multiple passive or leveraged streams can free you. That's the distinction. If you're manually managing everything, your income might be diversified, but your life is divided. You've bought yourself a grind, not a legacy. The goal is not to be involved in every stream. The goal is to own the stream and hire someone to manage the flow. And here's where it gets real. Most people don't want multiple streams because they're trying to build wealth. They want them because they're trying to feel secure. But security without strategy is just fear in disguise. If you're building out of fear of losing everything, you'll build inconsistently and desperately. You won't grow, you'll scramble. Security doesn't come from having income coming in from every direction. It comes from knowing how to produce value on demand, knowing that if it all fell apart today, you could rebuild it from scratch. That's real power, not the number of streams, but the strength of the one who built them. Let's take it even further. Not all streams are created equal. Some streams are trickles, others are floods. Some drain your time, others buy your time back. If your second or third stream only adds a few $100 a month, but costs you 10 hours a week, you've created another job, not a stream. But if you use one strong source to fund a rental property, write a book, build a digital product, or invest in a scalable off, now you're talking wealth streams, streams that pay you again and again for work you did once. You've got to stop asking, how many income streams do I have? And start asking, which streams are scalable, which are automated, which can grow without me touching them. That's the kind of thinking that shifts you from surviving to scaling. The wealthy don't chase streams, they create systems. They don't hustle for income. They position for overflow. They use one business to fund another, one idea to birth 3 more, one asset to buy another asset, and every stream they add comes from the surplus, not the scramble. So no, multiple streams of income is not the goal. It's the reward. It's what happens after you master a vehicle, after you build something that prints cash, after you stop being addicted to being busy and start being obsessed with being effective. Focus, build the foundation, then multiply from the overflow. That's how streams turn into rivers, and rivers into oceans. People see someone making 6 figures and assume they're rich. They hear about someone pulling in $250K a year and think, wow, they've made it. But here's the truth most people never realize until it's too late. A high income does not equal wealth. A big paycheck might look good on paper, but if it's not converted into assets, cash flow, and ownership, it's nothing but smoke and mirrors. You can make €0 a year and still be broke if your lifestyle consumes every dollar you earn, and in today's culture, that's more common than people want to admit. Because the minute the income goes up, the spending follows, the house gets bigger, the car gets flashier, the vacations get fancier, and suddenly you're trapped. Not because you don't make enough, but because you never learned how to keep and multiply what you make. That's called lifestyle inflation, and it's one of the biggest enemies of true wealth. As your income grows, so do your liabilities. You finance more. You upgrade more. You take on more expenses that look like status. Act like anchors. You're making more than ever and feeling more pressure than ever. Why? Because income without discipline is just a fancier kind of broke. Let's get real. Earning a lot of money is not hard if you know how to sell, market, or provide value. There are plenty of doctors, lawyers, salespeople, business owners, and influencers making big money. But wealth isn't about what you earn. It's about what you own. It's about what keeps paying you when you stop working. If your income depends on your time and presence, You don't own a business. You own a job. You don't have wealth. Have wages. Wealthy people don't measure success by how much they earn. They measure it by how long they can live off what they own. Let me ask you something. If you stopped working today, how long could you keep your lifestyle going? That answer tells you if you're wealthy or just living a high income illusion, because real wealth is about freedom, not figures. And here's another harsh truth. The tax system punishes high earners and rewards asset owners. You get taxed the hardest when your money comes from a paycheck. The more you make through active income, the more they take. If your money comes from investments, real estate, dividends, royalties, or business ownership, you're taxed differently. You keep more because the system was built to favor producers, not performers. High income feels good, but it can become a trap. You get used to a certain level of comfort, and now you can't step back to build. You're locked in. You've got golden handcuffs on. You're working to maintain, not to multiply. That's why some of the most brilliant people in high-income careers stay stuck for decades. They're afraid to pause the income to build the infrastructure for wealth. They'd rather look rich than be rich, because being rich isn't about a Rolex, a Benz, or a penthouse. It's about owning your time. It's about not having to say yes to money just because you need it. It's about freedom of choice, freedom of time, and freedom of location. That doesn't come from income. That comes from assets. That comes from ownership. That comes from passive and residual income. It comes from multiplying money, not just making it. Think about this. A school teacher with no debt, 3 rental properties, and consistent passive income is often wealthier than the surgeon earning $400K a year who's drowning in mortgage payments, student loans, private school tuition, and a luxury lifestyle that never lets them breathe. Because wealth is measured in freedom units, not salary figures. And you want to know what's even worse. High income can create a false sense of security. You start thinking, I'm good. I'm making more than most people. And that comfort blinds you from the fact that you're not building anything that lasts beyond your ability to work. You're consuming instead of creating. You're spending instead of scaling. You're reacting instead of investing. Wealthy people don't just earn. They deploy. They don't just accumulate. They allocate. They're not focused on how much they make this year. They're focused on what they'll own in 5. They're not impressed with 6-figure income. They're focused on 7-figure net worth. Because income gets taxed, spent, and forgotten. Wealth gets passed down. Income ends when you stop working. Wealth keeps going when you're gone. So don't fall for the hype. Don't confuse income with intelligence. Don't confuse status with sustainability. Build something real. Shift your focus from earning to owning, because the goal isn't to earn more money, it's to build a life that doesn't require you to trade your time for it. Let's get one thing straight. Talking about money isn't greedy, it isn't selfish, it isn't unspiritual, immoral, or materialistic. Talking about money is necessary, it's strategic, and for anyone who actually wants to walk in financial freedom, it's non-negotiable. The only people who benefit from your silence around money are the ones who stay in control while you stay confused. This idea that it's wrong to talk about money has been drilled into people for generations. You grow up hearing things like money doesn't grow on trees, don't talk about finances at the table, it's rude to ask someone how much they make, or the classic, money is the root of all evil. That mindset gets baked into your operating system until you start to believe that even wanting more money is somehow corrupt. But let me ask you a question. If you never talk about money, how do you learn how to manage it? If you never talk about it, how do you know how to make it grow? If you never open your mouth about finances, how do you teach your children, shift your habits, or build legacy? See, silence isn't humility, It's a trap. And it keeps good people broke while the bold get paid. Talking about money doesn't make you greedy. Being obsessed with hoarding it at the expense of others does. Talking about money isn't arrogance, but pretending it doesn't matter while quietly struggling to pay your bills, that's delusion. Money is not everything, but in the areas where money is required, nothing else can replace it. Try paying your rent with peace. Try feeding your family with purpose. Try funding your dream with faith alone. Without money, those things stay ideas instead of impact. You see, the people who say money talk is selfish usually have one of two problems. Either they're broke and bitter about it, or they're rich and want to keep you out of the conversation. Either way, it's about control. Keep people quiet about money, and you keep them uninformed. Keep them uninformed, and you keep them dependent. It's not about greed, it's about power. And talking about money puts that power back in your hands. Let's flip the script. Why is it wrong to talk about how to create value and get paid for it? Why is it greedy to teach people how to multiply what they earn so they can bless more people? Give more generously and live with options. The truth is, money amplifies who you already are. If you're greedy, money will make that louder. If you're generous, money will expand your reach. Money doesn't corrupt you. It exposes you. So if you're scared to talk about it, the question isn't whether it's wrong to talk about money. The question is, what are you afraid will be exposed? People say, well, I don't do it for the money. That sounds noble, but let's be honest. You still need money to do what you do. So why not talk about it? Why not master it? Why not stop pretending you're too pure to have financial goals when the same bills show up at your house just like they do at everybody else's? Let's stop acting like poverty is a virtue and wealth is a vice. That's backwards. When you avoid talking about money, you make it mysterious, and what becomes mysterious becomes intimidating. The people who grow the most financially are the ones who make money a normal conversation. They talk about pricing. They talk about investments. They talk about debt, credit, taxes, leverage, profits, and losses. Without shame. They don't worship money, but they don't run from it either, because they understand that money is a tool, and if you don't learn how to use it, someone else will use it against you. Let me make this clear. If you're building a business, raising a family, leading a team, or carrying a vision, you must talk about money, because money fuels missions. It funds movements, it creates options, it lets you say yes to opportunity and no to compromise, and if you don't talk about it, you'll never master it. You'll always settle for less and call it being humble, when in reality it's fear in a costume. Stop letting guilt stop you from growth. Stop letting old programming keep you small. The people who told you not to talk about money, they either didn't know what they were doing or didn't want you to know what they were doing. Either way, that mindset does not serve you, and it certainly won't serve your children, your clients, or your calling. The world needs more people who are righteous and rich, who are principled and paid, who can speak about purpose and profit in the same sentence without flinching. Because when good people get good at money, they do great things with it. So talk about money, ask questions, get educated. Share your wins, expose your losses, learn the language of wealth, because silence won't save you from lack, but wisdom, spoken, shared, and practiced, can change everything.